This morning I'll touch on Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and what I expect in the Fed meeting there. And secondly, and more importantly, I'll talk about the quarterly institutional presentation, which should be available. The 90-some pages of this should be available to the network later today. The media is concentrating on Janet Yellen's opening address at Jackson Hole. Jackson Hole, Wyoming is the annual strategy session of the Fed. They don't actually make direct decisions, but they talk about the ongoing development of how they're going to do business, how they're going to make decisions. And I don't think that there's going to be much of direct impact on the market in Janet Yellen's speech, apart from her remarks that the Fed intends to gradually tighten monetary policy. And I think that may be given more emphasis by the media this time around than previously. I think the two most interesting presenters at Jackson Hole are on the last day. Mark Carney, who's the governor of the Bank of England, will present, and Raghuram Rajan, who is in his last month as governor of the Reserve Bank of India, is also presenting. I think Mark Carney is interesting because I think the Bank of England in recent months has shown how adaptable and flexible and fast it is to move, particularly in comparison, for example, to the European Central Bank. It was 2009 in which the Bank of England invented quantitative easing. And it's only so many years later, in 2015, that their policy of quantitative easing gets across the English Channel and is adopted by the European Central Bank. And the reason it was adopted by the European Central Bank is that in the meantime, it was also adopted by Ben Bernanke as chair of the Fed and was successful in generating a rebound in the US economy. Raghuram Rajan is at the end of a period of 3 years of governor of the Reserve Bank of India. I realise there's a couple of really interesting things. It's 11 years since Raghuram Rajan spoke in Jackson Hole, Wyoming in 2005 when he was Chief Economist of the International Monetary Fund, in which he forecast the global financial crisis to be roundly knocked down by Larry Summers at the meeting and rebuffed. Now, I wrote a piece about him last year, The Man Who Got It Right. I referred to him in a piece I wrote last month about structural change in the US banking system. In the US banking system as a result of re-regulation. I realise it's 5 years since I spoke to Raghu at the Chicago, what was then the annual convention in Chicago of the American Economics Association, and he was leaving the University of Chicago to take up the position as chief policy advisor to the Indian Prime Minister. And at that stage, what he said what he wanted to do was generate a whole series of structural changes in the Indian economy, particularly Indian banking, to make them much more internationally competitive. Well, he's done that, and he's also brought about a change in the Indian tax system through the introduction of GST. And the result of that is that he's left the country in much more internationally competitive condition. And I actually think that, and I'll talk about this when I talk about the quarterly presentation, that we're just at the stage now where India is going to outperform China for the rest of our lifetimes. And I think India, in terms of index funds, will probably be a really good place to look for opportunities over the next few years. So turning to the quarterly institutional presentation, I talked on Wednesday about the outlook for the S&P 500 and why I have a pretty bullish view there, but I also talked about the Fed, in which I thought that the market was underappreciating the need for the Fed to tighten rates over the period between now and the end of next year, and those Fed tightenings will generate shocks and bull market corrections to the S&P 500 as it goes up between now and the end of next year. Today, we really want to talk about the real economy. As I've said, if you look at India, it's growing at 7.5%, and China is growing at 6.5% this year. And so India will outperform China for the rest of our lifetimes. And I think that's an important structural change we should have a look at. In the quarterly institutional presentation, there are two significant new introductions. One is we show a model of the US economy, and secondly, we show a model of the euro area economy. The model of the US economy is based on something we've had in the presentation for many years, and that's the Chicago Fed National Activity Indicator. But in the last couple of months, I've had questions from at least one institution, particularly when the Chicago Fed actually looked pretty weak about 3 months ago. What did that mean for GDP? So what I've done is shown a model of US GDP based on the Chicago Fed. And what's actually happened in June and July is you've seen a significant recovery of the Chicago Fed National Activity Indicator from the low levels that it was in April and in May. And the result of that is that we show in this model the US economy growing at about between 2.3 and 2.4%. I've got the US economy for the year as growing at 2.2%. Now that's way higher than I had 3 months ago. I had it at 1.7% for the year 3 months ago. Now I've got it at 2.2% for the year. I think I may have to revise that further up later into the year. Now what's actually happening is as we've got into the second half of the year, we've had a dramatic swing around in non-residential construction in the US economy. Now I've spoken before about how the fall in oil prices were generating a loss in oil company earnings or energy company earnings in the US, and that was generating a slump in investment. Now what we're seeing we go into this half, we're seeing actually a surge in non-residential construction in the energy sector, amazingly enough. And the reason that's happening is not because of oil. I know that the oil price has gone up. It's because of gas. There is a significant structural increase in the domestic demand for gas in the United States relative to oil. Now, part of this is because of the reduction in coal production in West Virginia, which is why Donald J. Trump will win West Virginia in the election. Now, this is partly because of increased Obama environmental regulation, in part because of simply price, that gas is a cheaper way of generating electricity than coal is. But what you've got is a significant increase in gas demand in the US economy. And as a result of that, there's a significant increase in demand for gas pipeline infrastructure in the US economy. And it is the investment in that that is generating a surge in activity in the second half. Now, the Atlanta Fed, which now casts the most recent data on US GDP, shows that they estimate that growth has accelerated from the GDP number for the second quarter of 1.2. I think that'll be revised up to 1.8. But it's accelerating to about 3.4 in the third quarter. So dramatic acceleration in the third quarter in the US economy because of that higher level of non-residential construction, because of investment in the gas sector. Interestingly, what we've also done in this quarterly presentation is we introduce a model of the euro area. And this is based on a survey of business sentiment that's done by the European Commission, maybe the one good thing the European Commission's ever done, but produces a really good model, which is the most accurate model of GDP of anywhere we've ever produced which shows that the euro area economy is accelerating from about 1.5 to about 1.7% growth, and is significantly stronger because of recovery in business investment in the euro area.